We're
Hey
live.
everybody, are we going? Are we
We're
live?
live. We're live.
Oh my gosh! Hey everybody, welcome to Canary Cry Radio. My name's Basil.
And this is Gons. Thank you guys for tuning in. It's a little different today because we got an interview. It's a Canary Cry Radio episode, not a news talk. So
Love it.
hopefully you guys will learn some stuff here. We got Brad Cam with us today. Brad is the co-founder of Unstoppable Domains. And you might have heard us talking about decentralization and blockchain and all this kind of stuff. And we're going to learn a little bit more about it today, specifically from Brad. Brad Cam, how you doing, buddy?
Doing great. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Just to start off, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, just real brief, so that people kind of know what you're about, where you're coming from?
Yeah, for
Brief or
sure.
not so brief, man. You can start all the way from the beginning. Where where were you born? What
Yeah.
kind of what was your favorite food as an infant? Milk was mine. I don't know what yours was, but let us get to know you a little bit.
Yeah, my earliest memories food-wise would be peanut butter and crackers, so nothing too wild. But
Yeah.
I'm from Atlanta. I'm entrepreneur, been starting companies since pretty early age. Started some real estate related companies in Atlanta. It was kind of during a crazy time. The real estate market was going wild in the mid 2000s, and then it crashed down really low in the late 2000s and caused a global recession. So I was part of it during the boom time and during the bust time. And at some point, I think around 2012, I realized that I was in the wrong game. That I was, not playing with the future. I was, not in software. So I decided to get out of real estate, moved to San Francisco, packed two bags, had almost, sold my company. Didn't get very much out of it, but packed two bags, moved to San Francisco, and started doing the software entrepreneurship thing. So moved out in 2012, started working on a company that was not related to blockchain, but I moved into this kind of wacky hacker house called 20 Mission. It was, I think, 14 people living in these like broken down rooms. At one point, somebody called the police saying that a bunch of squatters were living there. And when
Yeah.
they showed up, we were like, no, we pay rent. And they're like, you pay rent for this? They shot a few horror movies in this building pretty early on too. So just to give you an idea of what the vibe was. But it also launched a couple of very early crypto companies, and it was like a hangout for a lot of early crypto activities in San Francisco. So I also met a whole bunch of people that were building on the stuff, and that's how I got into it.
Wow. Yeah, there you go. So you've been looking forward, getting positioning yourself in the best place for, making the world a better place in the future there. And blockchain is one of those things. Now, you're from Unstoppable Domains. And people have heard, our listeners have heard Gons mention this a few times. We've used Unstoppable Domains. We're into it, and we want to get a little bit deeper into the sort of philosophical idea behind decentralization and everything like that. But just as another little intro, what is Unstoppable Domains, and why is Unstoppable Domains?
Good question. So what Unstoppable Domains is it is a domain business. So similar to the creators of .com, we created a domain registry called .crypto, and it works in a similar way as a regular .com domain would work, except there's a few different things. The first is that it's not part of regular DNS, and so it doesn't work in the same, it doesn't use the same system that .com and all the other domains you might be used to use. Instead, it uses a blockchain. And so what this means is that you store the domain yourself inside of your wallet, not a company. So GoDaddy, for example, with your .com domain, stores your .com domain, and it means that they can move it around. It means they can take it away from you. It means if they get hacked, it could get lost. But if you store it yourself in your wallet, none of that can happen. So
Yeah, so it's
that's a big idea.
Yeah, it seems like when we talk about digital assets and things like that, and unique digital assets that can't be copied and moved and owned. I mean, it sounds like for the basic premise is when you get a unstoppable domains domain, you actually own it and can hold it and can control it, versus having some other company giving you access to the product that you purchased.
Exactly,
Oh
exactly. And
yeah.
the why, and the why here, which I think is the most important question, is that we think that everyone in the world should be able to have access to the internet without fear of censorship, and that the current system doesn't enable this. It has a whole bunch of companies and individuals and governments and all kinds of other people that get to decide what's okay to say and what's not okay to say online, and it's a big deal because they can take you offline completely. In the current system, one person or one company or one group can say, I don't think what you're doing is okay, and they can make you disappear.
Right.
And that's the problem with the current system. And that is a solvable problem with new tech that's decentralized.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's interesting because it doesn't seem like that should be so revolutionary, and yet here we are. It is revolutionary, and even the idea of centralization versus decentralization is kind of a difficult concept for people who don't, spend a lot of time maybe understanding the inner workings of the internet and networks and things like that. Um, can you give us like a layman's version of like what is decentralization? How would it work? How is it different from what we already have, and why should we care?
Yeah, I think it really all comes down to permission. So, am I giving somebody else permission to decide whether or not I can publish this website, whether or not I can make this payment, whether or not I can send this message? Am I
Right.
relying on somebody else to give me permission to give me access to my username so I can, continue to communicate with you, or my email address so I can continue to message with you, or whatever? It's all about how the system works at a fundamental level. Is there a person or a company that I need to rely on, who I'm trusting to give me access? Or do I control the access? Am I able to just interact directly with the system? And to give everybody kind of an example, there's a decentralized network that a lot of us probably played with back in the day. If you remember the glory days of Napster or the other music sharing networks in the early
Kazaa,
2000s,
Morpheus,
Kazaa. Yeah, so I think we're dating ourselves here. We're making
LimeWire.
ourselves
Oh yeah.
making ourselves
LimeWire.
LimeWire. We're making ourselves sound old because a lot of people probably never even use those things. But there was this moment in the early 2000s where you could get any song you wanted, and it
Yeah.
was free and it was quick, and all you were doing was interacting with a peer-to-peer network where you were storing a song and then sharing it with the network, and then you could go and download it off of someone's computer. That technology, that framework, that dynamic is how blockchains work. And it's how all of this decentralized internet stuff works, where instead of sharing that song, you're sharing my website. And so I can have 100,000 people around the world all sharing a copy of my website. And because I have that, it means that no one can just turn me off with a switch. Like right now, Amazon Web Services or whoever I use for my website can just with a flip of a switch turn me off and I'm gone. My website's gone. No one can
Right.
see my content anymore. Now in the US, this may not be as big of a deal. A lot of people ask, like, is that really a big problem in America? And I would say, it is to some extent, but it's not nearly what happens around the world. There's a lot of places where, you can't even publish because they have systems set up to where if you use certain terms, it doesn't even go online in the first place,
Mm.
much less get
Wow.
taken down. It's just not even able to be published in the first place. And this is a crazy way for tools to work. Technology does not need to work this way. Technology does not require a human to give me permission to use it. The humans who made that tool created a permission system. But
Right.
that's not necessary anymore, and it's actually quite dangerous because if you put somebody in charge, eventually over time, they're going to use that power, or the person who comes after them is going to use that power in a way that is inappropriate or not in everyone's best interest. So the community, the crowd, can do a much better job deciding what's okay than any group of people that we could assign to make that kind of choice for us.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it seems so natural to us now, that we have a internet service provider, we have services provided to us, whether they be, the obvious ones like Facebook or YouTube, or even things like Squarespace, website hosting, that kind of stuff. It's fun because we all have access to creating and putting out content, but like you said, at the same time, the heavy-handed controls that are just built into the system, mainly for sort of free market reasons, because that's how you make that sweet internet money. But at the same time, like you said, it's kind of like the absolute power corrupts absolutely. And as we're seeing, especially in recent days, if a company doesn't like what you're putting out there, they just shut you down. No ifs, ands, or buts. We had a stream cut the other week, or actually the other episode a day or two ago.
2 days ago.
And yeah, and not even to mention, the censorship, if that's not too strong of a word, of just, having stuff disappear out of thin air. So when you're talking about, when the audience here are trying to build a picture of centralization versus decentralization in your mind, centralization is what we're dealing with now. You've got companies and services who allow you to participate in the internet, and they can obviously choose to not allow you to participate in the internet, and there's really nothing you can do about it. You're sort of at the whim of the levers of control.
And I think that this is, even in cases where companies didn't want to be this way, like I don't think YouTube necessarily set out to say, like, in 10 years, we want to decide like what's appropriate for people to be watching in video or not. I don't think that's what they even intended to do. They just wind up in this place where once you wind up storing all that video, someone's going to call you up and say, hey, delete that one. I don't like this one. And someone else is going to call you up and say, delete this other one. I don't like that one. And it's by virtue of the way the system works. Like YouTube control those videos. Therefore, someone can call you up and try to convince you to take it down. Whereas if YouTube didn't control that, if you, the creators, controlled your own videos and you gave YouTube access so they could show it to their users, the power dynamic would change completely, because you wouldn't need to rely on YouTube servers. You would control the videos yourself. You would store those on your, decentralized storage network, your website, your decentralized website, and you would give access to YouTube. But you might give access to another 50 video sites too. So you don't have to worry anymore about being taken offline entirely. Now, YouTube might still say, we don't like what you're doing, and kick you off. But it's not nearly as bad. Being hidden from YouTube but still being on 49 other platforms is very different than going off the internet entirely, which is what's happening right now. And so it's just the way the tech actually works is not safe for us. And I don't blame the companies either. This is all they had at their disposal when they first launched, and they were trying to provide this service for us. Now that we've seen social media play out over the past 15 years, now we know it's something that needs to change.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, but one of the things.
Gons?
Yeah, one of the things that's. We've again, it's a good week to talk to you because just last week one of my videos was taken down and for inappropriate content, and another one on the Canary Cry Radio channel was taken down, and our last stream was cut off while we were getting into some of the history of the virus there. But also, one of the reasons why I was interested, and there's a link to, there's an affiliate link, just, to be transparent, I'm an affiliate, so, if you guys want to pick up domains, we'll get into the unstoppable domain stuff a little bit more. But one of the reasons why I found your guys' stuff very interesting was because I didn't know that there was one company that owned the .com extension and the .net and .gov and .edu, and they're basically renting out all these domains to everybody. And it's the reason why we have to pretty much pay every year to continue renting. I came face to face with it because I used to have FaceLikeTheSun.com. I had it since 2010, I think, is when I got the domain, or maybe it was early 2011. And partly my fault, but partly, just the way the system works. I didn't get any of the notifications to just reclaim my domain. So one day I was looking and my domain was down. I thought, okay, I just got to go fix it, or I thought it was a certificate issue or something. And lo and behold, I found out that my domain was swooped up by some other company, and they're trying to sell it back to me for $2,500. And I said, I'll give you $100 for it. And they said, you can give us payments each month for whatever. And I'm like, I'm not going to do that. So I went with the .net for now. But it was one of those moments where I thought, man, this is ridiculous. Like, this is something that I built for 10 years, and it just gets taken away from me because I didn't get some notifications in email. And there's got to be a better way out there. And so that's what piqued my interest in looking into what you guys were up to. Just so for anyone out there, because we talk about these things, and we're not trying to say that this is going to be some kind of be-all, end-all freedom thing, but these are tools that, especially what you guys are developing, that I think can help wrap our heads around what the current system is, and that's part of the learning curve for everyone, but also just a way to, again, bring ownership back to the individual. So talk a little bit about how that works in terms of don't get too technical, but in terms of the technology and the stack and all that stuff. And we got someone in the chat saying VeriSign, and so they're aware of some of those things. But how does it work, and what are you guys doing different to give power back to the people, so to speak?
So the traditional system is relying on DNS servers. And so there is a group of people that control the DNS servers, and there's multiple copies of it, but it's essentially controlled by a group of people. And that's like the official record of all of the domain names and who owns them. And then there are custodians, registrars like GoDaddy, who have a license, and they're able to make updates. They're able to say, like, oh, this person now owns this. This FaceLikeTheSun.com squatter now owns FaceLikeTheSun.com, unfortunately.
Yeah.
That would be like GoDaddy or the registrar or whatever that makes that update. And they also act as your custodian. The registry, like VeriSign or whatever, the seller of .com, has a license with another group to have the right to rent those domains to customers. So there's like a whole bunch of levels where VeriSign could even lose the right to .com, and that could change things. So there's a whole bunch of weird things going on in that system. And then the website piece, so the domain piece is on DNS servers. The website piece is on whatever hosting service you use, Amazon Web Services or whatever. You're pointing an IP address to the domain name. That's how it works. So there are domain registrars who can take your domain away, and then there are web hosting services who like Amazon, who can turn you off. In the system that we're building, we're replacing the DNS servers with a domain on a blockchain. And so this is a smart contract on like Ethereum blockchain, which is probably the most mature blockchain network at this point. And then, so the domain is part of a smart contract on the Ethereum blockchain, which means that the domain sits inside of your Ethereum wallet. It's called an ERC-721 token. So for anybody out there who's played with like CryptoKitties or Gods Unchained or any of these other collectibles, domains use the same format. So you can store them in the same way as you would a CryptoKitty. And many popular wallets enable this, where you can see your domain sitting inside of your wallet. This is controlled with your private key, which means that if you have your domain on your phone, somebody needs to physically get your phone if they want to move the domain. They would need to get your phone, unlock your phone, and then move it. That's the only way to do it. There's no way to do it remotely or anything like that.
Yeah.
So we've got domain name on a blockchain, and then we've got content on a network called IPFS. My website is on IPFS. And this is similar to that LimeWire example, to that Napster example, where instead of songs, it could be songs, but instead of songs, I've got websites. So I store a website on the network, and there's 1,000 other people storing that same website on the network. So I can find and view this website by downloading it from I have 1,000 different people I could choose from to download it, as opposed to just Amazon Web Services, who if Amazon Web Services decided to turn it off, then it's gone. So long answer, you replace DNS with the blockchain, you replace Amazon Web Services with IPFS, and from there, you wind up with a decentralized website.
So cool. And, I think that was very well put in a way that if anybody's out there has, opened or has started a website, built a website, had to go through all these different little channels in order, like kind of how you put it, to be allowed to do what you want to do, allowed to use the name, the URL that you want, allowed to use a service to put up a website. As we've gone a little bit into it before, and I mentioned it earlier this show, digital assets. It's a little bit hard to understand when you don't have a full, understanding of how things work as of now. But when you talk about storing the URL as a token in a wallet, an easy way to think about that for those who might not have all the technical details, it's almost like your domain is a cryptocurrency almost. It's a transaction stored, well, not a transaction, but a digital asset stored in your own wallet. So it's an actual object that you own, which is a pretty incredible, paradigm shifting idea of how these things would work. So that's pretty cool.
And I think it's very similar to the way that, dollars are to cryptocurrencies as traditional domains are to blockchain domains, where basically with your dollars, they're stored inside of a bank, which means that you don't control them. The bank controls them. In the same way, GoDaddy stores your domain for you. You don't control it. They control it. And there's actually no other way to get digital access to your money, your dollars, without trusting a bank or someone else. There's no way to get access to your digital domain without trusting a GoDaddy or something like that. So it's built into the system that you have to have a custodian. There's no way out. And so the same is true here for cryptocurrencies. Don't require a custodian. You can store your own money. Same thing here. You can store your own domain.
So cool. Now, Gons, if you don't mind, before we move on to the next question, I want to give a big old shout out to the people over on Twitch and remind people about how cool Twitch is real quick.
Okay,
is that cool with you?
Yep.
All right. Brad, are you cool with that?
Let's do it.
You get to meet some of our cool new followers over on Twitch. For those who need reminding, Twitch, we're trying to hit some goals over there so we can hit partner, and it opens up all sorts of fun tools just to let everybody know the types of cool stuff that we're talking about. Once we hit partner, there's a way we can set it up where you, the listeners, can control jingles on the show. So I'm excited for that one. I don't know about you, Gons, but so if you guys help us hit that goal, that's the kind of cool stuff we're going to be working with. And let's see, we got to get that average viewership up over on Twitch. So if you're watching anywhere else around the internet, please head to twitch.tv/Canary Cry Radio. Gons is going to drop that link in the chat for everybody. And I'm going to give just a few shout outs here to some of our new followers. One of them is Even Our Dog Is Woke. Thanks, Even Our Dog Is Woke, for following. Very cool. Thanks for being here. Let's see. We got Island Girl 21. Thanks for being here, Island Girl 21. This one I like. Gaston the Jesuit Priest. Okay, we got the Jesuits keeping an eye on us over here, liking it. Let's see here. Medios Alternativos. Oh, cool. There we go. Some fun stuff there. And let's see. Do we got one more? I saw the real Elon Musk follows us now. So thanks, the real Elon Musk. Thank you guys so much for following. And if you guys follow during the show here, we're going to give some shout outs later on. So go to twitch.tv/Canary Cry Radio and let's get her done, folks. Okay, back to you, Brad, the man of the hour. I saw somebody. Oh, by the way, listeners watching live, we're going to do a little question and answer segment at the end. So hold your questions until we mention that, because we got the man on the line. So at the end of the show, keep your questions. We'll ask for them, and we can have Brad answer some of them for you. One of them, Brad, was somebody was saying, "Oh man, this sounds complicated. It looks like I'm going to have to get my hacker skills up." Is that something people are going to need getting involved with unstoppable domains? Some sweet hacker skills?
No, and that's actually kind of our reason for being. The thing about blockchain is that I think it has some unbelievably smart, talented, truly brilliant, groundbreaking engineers, security engineers in particular, and it's missing all the UI and UX and product people. So the thing that's been missing is that stuff works, and it's so awkward that it only works for developers. And the whole thing we're trying to do here is take this down to a level and to a form where it makes sense to people who don't necessarily know or even care about crypto. They might care about censorship or whatever. So we're not trying to serve only crypto people. It is helpful. There's going to be a part of the process where you're going to want to philosophically understand what's going on with the crypto part. Just so you understand, like, I control my domain. So that's important for you to understand as a user. I store my own domain because it changes the user behavior. But
right.
other than these core ideas, no. Like, if you go to I see you got our website up back there. So you can type in a domain. It works just like you would expect it would, like at a GoDaddy, where you search, you click checkout, you buy, you can pay with credit card, you can pay with PayPal, you can pay with crypto. When you manage a domain, meaning add your website to it, we have like a little template builder, which looks, similar to like what you would see from like a Wix or something like that. And you just type in, you just drag and drop photos and images, and you do kind of all the basic stuff you'd expect, and you get yourself a website. Now,
Cool.
Obviously, if you want to build a more complicated app, you're going to need to write code, but that's the case for regular websites too. So there are definitely tools for non-technical users to be able to launch websites pretty easily, and those tools are getting better. Like we're going to see all kinds of easy kind of apps. We call them templates, but they're like little apps, so you can launch various types of websites without needing to code. So
Very cool.
Cool.
Yeah.
Sweet.
So there's a couple questions here that I have that go along the same lines here. So you talk about censorship resistant websites, and we can put up a website and nobody can take it down. And obviously, philosophically, that's a much better sort of system than what we have now, where you got all kinds of places, centralized gatekeepers that can take us down at any moment. However, the flip side of that is you have all these horrible things out there, kitty prawn, and I say prawn, but just to censor myself. But stuff on the dark web, the deep web, you got all kinds of horrific videos and all kinds of stuff. How is that going to be allowed as well? There's a part of the law maybe that's involved with that, but also how are you guys, dealing with that just philosophically, but technically as well?
Yeah, and I think it's this is a really important question. I think I'm actually I'm optimistic that decentralized web will dramatically improve the way that this works over the current web. Where in the current web, it's very easy to find dark little corners to do all kinds of bad stuff, and it's actually harder to catch. So what we believe is that at the technology level, at the base level, the way all of this stuff works, it can't have anybody who can control it, stop it, whatever. Because if you do that, then you wind up introducing a security flaw. Mm-hmm. So basically, if you introduce that, it's inevitably going to be used by people in power to gain more power. So the only safe system is one that doesn't have anybody at the base layer. But at the second layer, meaning when you go into an app and you go and try to view a website, a browser, for example, is not forced to resolve every single website. So a browser can say, you know what, this website is associated with phishing or illegal activity or immoral activity or whatever, and they can not resolve the website. They can show you a warning. They can have settings in the browser, kind of more similar to childproof settings or things like that. They could even have political ideology settings, because you might have one group that wants to rely on the ACLU for their definition of where the free speech line is. Somebody else might say, I want to rely on some different group because I don't trust the ACLU. And all of these different versions of free speech and what's okay and what's not okay can coexist. So I'm going to choose my browser, and my browser can choose my internet. And in this way, I have dozens or hundreds of options. So the effect of all of this is that 99.99% of applications are not going to show things that are seen as unethical and immoral or illegal. But if something really does need to be heard, it's going to get out because people will want it to get out. And so I think that's the key thing. And then to kind of get down into the weeds a little bit, this problem that YouTube and Facebook and all these other companies have, they have to do their own filtering. They have, it's this horrible, horrible job where they force people to watch this stuff.
Yeah.
And then identify manually, this is this bad stuff that no one else should see. I feel it's the worst job imaginable.
Yeah.
All of those systems are siloed. They don't tell you what their criteria are. They don't cooperate together in any way. Whereas in the future, all these apps can just share a record of, here are the bad sites. And then the community can also decide, here are the bad sites. And then applications can say, I want to do filtering based on what the community believes. And you can have different communities believe different things. So this flexibility allows us to do all the filtering that we would want to be doing in applications today, but also guarantees that if something really does need to get out there, people will push it out there. So it's a long answer, and it's kind of a weird new dynamic where we're not going to have one version of the internet anymore that everyone sees. But I think that's better.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it's almost like you're putting the responsibility back to the individual rather than relying on a Facebook or relying on a YouTube to curate that for you. And certainly, the outrage is, it's interesting because the outrage is always all YouTube and all Facebook and whatever other, the other countries, you have your totalitarian sort of more government oversight that's doing that. But this is totally flipping that and saying, no, you're almost responsible for your own internet, your own access to what you want to see, what you want, what kind of information you want your browser to filter and things like that. So I that makes a lot of sense. The other part, and I guess this is where, some of our audience, has these concerns, is the backdoor question. There's two parts to this. The backdoor, is there a secret backdoor, do you think, to any of this stuff, the Ethereum blockchain, Bitcoin? And also the other part being access to the internet as a whole. Right now we rely on these companies. Like for me, I have Cox Communication. If they throttle my internet signal, I'm out of luck. I really can't access the internet. I guess I can get on my phone and use some of the satellite stuff. But what are your thoughts there in terms of just the censorship or the ability to censor just anyone's access to the internet in general?
So in terms of the back door, no, I actually don't think there is. I think, there could be security flaws yet to be discovered, but the community, specifically the Ethereum community, is good at identifying those. So I think that we can have reasonably high confidence that that network is secure, and if it's not secure, that it will fix itself. It will upgrade itself such that it is. And the reason why we can feel confident in that is because it's a $20 billion network. And so if you were able to successfully hack it, you would make a lot of money. And people try constantly, and they haven't succeeded. So the proof is in the fact that it hasn't happened, essentially.
Right.
And the same is true for Bitcoin, that Ethereum and Bitcoin have been battle tested over the course of several years, where all kinds of people, all kinds of hackers around the world have tried. It looks like a super juicy target, actually, because it's just sitting out there in the public. All this money on this network hasn't happened. So I think that that's part of the reason why we think the time is now for this kind of stuff, because Ethereum has really just gotten, and smart contracts in general have really just gotten to the point where they are powerful enough, useful enough, mature enough that you can build a real app and a real business on top of it. You can actually have this replace, a DNS system now, and that's a relatively new thing in history. So I'm pretty confident because I think those systems they've done a pretty amazing job.
Totally. And it's interesting because part of this natural change in how we think about the internet, it can be a little bit intimidating for people once in a while. But the biggest thing we're looking at, you're trading. You're getting security and free speech and control over your own domains and possessions and websites. And in the short term, it seems like the only thing really that you're trading in for all of that is convenience. I mean, that's kind of the battle with human beings right now and new technology coming out. And it's an ongoing conversation, even in the privacy conversation when it comes to, we're all carrying around little spy machines in our pockets and we just keep them around because they're so convenient, being our phones with a Facebook app and a Google app and applications that are tracking everything we do. And, if you really want to separate from the whole sort of construction of spy gear that you've willingly accepted in your own pocket, it's going to take some inconvenience, taking Facebook off your phone, taking Messenger off your phone, using an encrypted texting app, something like that. In the same way, there will be some getting used to in making some sort of transfer over to a decentralized internet. But what people are finding more and more, especially those who are disconnecting from those, spy apps that we put on our phone, is, it seems a little inconvenient and it's a little different from how you've done it before. But when you do it, just like learning any other new technology, when you do it, you get all the benefits and you totally, get used to it and forget about how new and, confusing things can be. But it seems like you guys have got a pretty good streamlined process over there to make it pretty user friendly, huh?
It's getting better. I mean, I would still say though to your community, like, we're early days. This is not ready to switch over Walmart.com yet.
Right.
This is not about to onboard the entire traditional internet tomorrow. And it's because you have to just kind of remake a bunch of the tools and stuff like that. There's just a lot of pieces that need to come into place. But I think where we're at right now, it's becoming user friendly enough that your average crypto user can jump in, use it for the things that they would use it for crypto. And that community has a need, because the whole point of having a dApp is that you can interact directly with the blockchain. I can make something, you can interact directly with the blockchain. You don't need to worry about me failing as a company anymore. If I disappear as a company, it doesn't matter. But if I disappear as a company and my smart contract is on the blockchain, but the only way to view that is by going to my .com website, then I still have this problem. So in the blockchain world, it's critical to also decentralize this piece. So I think that community is saying, we need to get there, and we need to get there soon, because it's hurting our business otherwise. So I think that's the first group. The second group is going to be people who maybe are not crypto native, but they're really concerned about censorship. Maybe they're in Hong Kong, or they're in Turkey, or they're in some other place where they know that their internet is not safe. And so that group, I think, will be the next group that we'll see flock to this, even if it's a little awkward, because they need it. I think the third phase is going to be the everybody else phase, the regular internet users. And the reason why they're going to come on is because this tech will eventually be better than the centralized tech. And I think this is true just in general for open source. Open source is amazing over the long term. It's terrible in the short term. Because it's super awkward and inconvenient to use, but it scales so much better, and it causes so many more people to want to work on it. That's the thing that blockchain has. That's the thing that the internet had. That's the thing that all these other, decentralized peer-to-peer networks have is that you've got thousands or tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of people all around the world motivated to make it better because they all feel like they have a part of it. And that's completely different than the way it works if you have one company. One company only scales up to the size of the motivated and passionate employees that they can hire. Open source can motivate everyone.
Right.
So it will win over the long term. It will be faster, better, cheaper to use the decentralized web than the regular web.
I know. And I love how you put it too, because, when I think about open source and a lot of the different aspects of what you're talking about here is a deeply philosophical and important conversation. But I love that you talk about it in much more practical terms than I ever do. So I appreciate that very much. I want to give a big old shout out to a new follow of ours, Elon Musk's hologram. Thanks for being in the chat, Elon Musk's hologram. We got the real Elon Musk. We got his hologram in here. We're loving it. Also, I see that looks like there's somebody from Unstoppable Domains hanging out. Paul Unstoppable in the chat there. I'm glad we got somebody to answer questions. So thanks, Paul Unstoppable. Okay, so now there's some other questions because we've touched on a lot of great emerging technologies and stuff where you guys are pushing the limits of what we're used to and what the control philosophy and mechanisms of our world can handle. But along with that, there's things like artificial intelligence and Internet of Things, IoT, which are some technologies that we've had our eye on, seeing how that starts to affect not just the world, but also the internet and how the landscape of the internet more like. And there's also other things like 5G and quantum computing, things like that. But specifically, let's start with artificial intelligence and IoT. What does that look like with the decentralized web?
Well, I think artificial intelligence is probably just like a supercharger on all things. It's like if I can invent at this pace, maybe the AI can invent at this pace times, X, a lot more. So
it's got to figure out a way to enslave all humanity and harvest our energy for its own continuation.
I mean, I think that is the inevitable state. Maybe the Google Overlord or whatever, whatever the AI Overlord looks like. But I think there's probably going to be a golden age before that. Where stuff's super easy and you got a digital assistant that solves all your problems or whatever. So I'm really looking forward to that 10 or 15 year window before.
It's kind of
so
like the
optimistic.
internet.
I love that outlook. You know, we are going to be enslaved in the end, but we'll have some really convenient decades before that. I love it.
But in terms of IoT, I think that's also pretty relevant because you have what you have is essentially a bunch of internet connected devices. And they can do stuff for you, and you're going to want those internet-connected devices to be able to be secure. You certainly, it would be pretty scary if somebody could hack your vacuum cleaner and chase you around your house or something. It's kind of like it raises the stakes on some of the security stuff when you're talking about everything in your house or everything in your life being on the internet, and I think that's just one more reason why you're going to need a decentralized web and you're going to need control of your own data, because it's going to be super scary to have vulnerabilities when you're not just talking about your phone anymore. You're talking about all kinds of parts of your life. So I think it's more just that it's almost like a little bit hard for IoT to go really mainstream until you have more security. And I think that even might be one of the reasons why it hasn't maybe caught on in people's houses as much as, you go watch a movie from the 1990s, in 2015, robots are doing everything.
Yeah.
So I don't think we've gotten there yet. And I think that might be one of the reasons that we don't have this data security part solved.
Right. That makes sense. And one of the next things we wanted to touch on is 5G. There's little pushback on that in terms of some of the studies that show, making unwrapping DNA and stuff like that, and there's concerns around that. What are your thoughts there in terms of 5G? Do you think they're going to get into some frequencies that are detrimental to human health?
I am no expert on these things, so I have actually
He's just a
no concept.
blockchain boy. He doesn't know about
Blockchain boy. And
no
then
concept.
And then the big
I do
one
have
that.
one thing though.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I do have one comment there, which is that those types of networks tend to be run by like 2 or 3 companies, and those are the companies that have purchased the bandwidth from their prospective government or whatever, and that's really holding us back.
Right.
Like
right.
we were talking, we had a question. There was a question earlier that I'm sorry, Gonz, I don't think I got to, which was around internet access in general.
Yeah.
And I think internet access is a huge problem, and it's a huge problem related to the problems that we're working on that needs to be solved. And you're not going to get a fully decentralized internet, I don't think, unless you can guarantee decentralized, no permission access to the internet too. And I'm very excited about things like, Elon shooting internet satellites into space.
Starlink.
I think that kind of stuff is potentially great. I think virtual private networks that are very complex, where you're peer-to-peer networks where I'm able to go and use the internet off of someone's device that's 100 feet away from me or whatever. There's a lot of potential there, but I think this is a critical part for us to also have. So I am suspicious of these giant companies controlling internet access, because I just think that is not the way the internet should be going moving forward, and we should be dismantling that that horribly centralized system. And I'm sure anybody who's used Verizon or whatever recently would know, like, that is not a company trying to deliver a good service. Like, they are clearly in a position where they can just kind of do what they want. And I think that's the case with a lot of these internet service providers, and that's really bad.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's a really good point with looking at who controls the technology rather than the tech itself. The tech itself might be benign, but those who control it and those who are able to distribute it, they're the ones we should really keep an eye on. But also, the one last thing before we go into our next little thing here is quantum computers. It gets brought up all the time, even within some of the crypto news channels I watch and stuff. Some people might bring up, hey, can quantum computers crack all the SHA-256 code, encryption, and is all of our private keys eventually going to be cracked by quantum computers? What are your thoughts there?
I think if that were to happen, that would have a bigger impact than just on crypto, because that's how encryption works. Those encryption methods work. A lot of industries rely on those things.
Right.
So we would essentially have like kind of global chaos if that happened, and we would probably need to update systems to a new security method pretty quickly. So it's a little hard to predict. I know it's kind of one of those things that security researchers like to theorize about. My sense from having just kind of talked to people that are more on the like building blockchain side is that they expect that kind of whatever innovations there are on the breaking encryption side, that's just going to mean you're going to need to have more innovations on the developing new encryption side.
Right.
So it's kind of more like cat and mouse game,
Right.
You always got to kind of stay ahead of whatever the tech is that can break your system. And each time we think as humans we've built a system that can't be broken, somebody might find a way to break it or find some future vulnerability, and then we have to upgrade. I think that there's a very good chance that could happen at various points. I don't stay up at night worrying about it, because I think first of all, there's smarter people than me that are already worrying about it. So I have some relief there, but it's also just that we probably will need to migrate a bit at various points, and that's just kind of how it goes with tech.
I think people were freaking out at the end of last year when Google came out with quantum supremacy as their big PR stunt there to make it seem like they figured out quantum computers. But the technical people were saying that's not the case. But it's another marketing ploy by Google there. But one of the things, how much time have we got left? We got a little bit more time here. One of the things that I wanted to bring up with you, and just for the people that are interested in unstoppable domains, if you do a search on YouTube for interviews and interviews with Brad, one of the things that popped up was a video by a guy named The Crypto Lifestyle, who was very critical of unstoppable domains. Not the company per se, but there was, I guess, a little mix-up with him buying a domain called cryptozombie.crypto, and there's a YouTuber named CryptoZombie who should have had ownership of that or something, and he's a partner with Unstoppable Domains. And it was a pretty scathing type of thing, trying to say that you guys are centralized and you guys are, you guys aren't to be trusted and this type of thing. I don't know what came out of that. I might have been, I think it was a few months ago. Can you give us an update on what that was and what, if there's any resolution or anything like that?
Yeah, so this is a intentional aspect of our launch where we are running what is called a sunrise period, where we protect the domains of brand holders. And this is super important, even with a blockchain system, because otherwise you're going to have your entire domain registry full of scammers, phishers, copycats, and people who the brand owners wouldn't be able to participate. So
yeah, you mean I can't get Google.crypto or Amazon.crypto?
You can't. And
how am I supposed to retire, man? That was my plan.
But FaceLikeTheSun, we've got for you. Because the idea is that first of all, this is a safety consideration. We don't want to have people be able to go around with a name that looks like it's someone else and then potentially, phish that person or whatever. So it's a security concern, especially with a blockchain domain where you're receiving money. But it's also a just adoption question. It's important to make sure that the right people get the right domains. That's very hard to do on chain. So the way it works is you buy the domain from us. Once you claim the domain, it's yours forever. There's absolutely nothing we can do. That's the way the blockchain works. That's the way the system works. But we think that during the sunrise period, it's important for us to make sure that those domains don't go to people that aren't the brand owners. We had a bug in our system, unfortunately, and somebody was able to claim the domain of a person who had worked with us, who we intended to give the domain to them. We had a bug. It was able to be registered by someone else. That's unfortunate. The only error I see there is that we had a bug on our system and it enabled the wrong person to claim the domain. Okay. So that's the only thing I feel bad about there. Not that we refunded the domain. I think we should have done that. Now, had he claimed it, it would have been impossible to refund. So we instead, asked him to get it to the right person. He didn't want to. He was, trying to get attention. So I'd rather not give it more attention if we can.
Yeah, absolutely, and that makes sense. And I think there was a period also where you allowed the brands to claim certain domains as well, if I'm not mistaken. That there was a period of time that you contacted these companies and brands and said, "Hey, we have this brand domain on the .crypto," and if they didn't accept it, then the person who purchased it or claimed it was able to hold on to it.
Yeah, and that's still going on. Okay. So that's until the end of the year, and we're trying to make this super easy for brands to adopt. So we are allowing brands to claim their domains for free if they prove that they are the owner of that brand. So the purpose of this is to get adoption. Like if you don't do it this way, you're not going to be able to have a mainstream domain registry because brands won't be able to use it, companies won't be able to use it, and it's going to be full of people pretending to be somebody that they're not and trying to scam you for money. So
yeah, that makes sense.
This is the best way to build a system. Like this.
There we go.
We think this is the right approach, and that's why we're doing it this way. Now, ultimately, what's going to happen is that you'll be able to register. It will be open at some point where you will be able to register without having to go directly through us. But that's not critical for getting the censorship resistant piece, because all you need to do is own a domain, and then you're good.
Now, Brad, there's someone on the YouTube here, Ann411. She's saying blockchain will lead to singularity for AI. Respond.
I don't know what'll lead to singularity for AI, but I'm a little bit more worried about plugging a computer directly into my brain than I am about blockchain for the singularity. But who knows?
Who knows? We got you on that one. And 411 got you. Okay, cool. So moving on here. Now, here's the thing. We see the concepts of decentralization and a new version of the internet, and inevitably trying to loosen the grip of control over people, just full stop, and
Yeah.
people interacting with the internet, which was interesting. When I was younger, the internet was sort of considered like fake space, like a not real world where nothing matters and it's just a big waste of time. And obviously, a decade later here, it's not really considered a fake world. I mean, certainly with social media and real people being on the other side, and huge amounts, especially during this pandemic thing. Huge amounts of economics going on the internet, not just with big companies like Amazon, but people are making their livings on the internet. If it wasn't for the internet, this fake real world, Gons and I would just be two guys, sitting in a closet alone, yelling at each other about AI and blockchain and things.
Yeah.
But luckily now we get real people to listen. But when it comes to the future, we explore all sorts of things going on in the world, and our audience are smart, paying attention-y people. And we often discuss the future and technology through sort of a lens of biblical eschatology, meaning like, where's all this going? Where's it going to end? And Gons, you might have to give a little bit of a intro.
Sure.
Do you know where I'm going with this?
Yeah. So it's interesting that you brought up some of the the Google Overlord type of scenario as a potential outcome, because there is this interesting prophecy in the book of Revelation. It's in chapter 13, and verse 15. It talks about the second beast, which is supposed to be a false prophet type of character, was permitted to give breath to the image. An image throughout the Bible is talked about as an idol, as a statue. It doesn't have life, but all of a sudden it's given breath, and all of a sudden this image is able to speak and kill anybody who doesn't worship it, which is pretty intense. Which sounds a lot like an AI or a robot, sentient robot type of situation. And then it also, this is also the same passage that talks about the mark of the beast, which I'm sure you've heard of because you work in the world of cryptocurrency. I'm sure you've come across that before. But nobody can buy or sell small, great, rich, poor, free, slave. They'll all receive a mark on the right hand or the forehead, so that no one can buy or sell unless they had the mark, the name of the beast or the number of its name, and 666 and all that. What are your just thoughts there? I mean, these are prophetic passages that were written a couple thousand years ago. Do you think that there's any kind of reality to this, being someone that just is in technology and entrepreneurship and everything like that? This is, a little bit outside of the scope of a question that you might regularly receive, but I'm just curious, and I think we're curious, the audience is probably curious what your thoughts are on some of these passages.
I think the AI as this sort of, potential overlord, future overlord, is not an irrational fear, honestly.
Hey, that's the nicest thing anybody's ever said to me, Brad.
I think that we need to be careful as a species, as a society, to make sure that we don't create something that could hurt us. I think that is a very real fear. I think it's going to be very hard to identify what that thing is as it's happening. I think it's going to be kind of hard to spot, and so we may be looking in the wrong direction frequently. So I think the hard part is to try to figure out what actually is the thing. But I think in general, my view, when I think about the potential dangers of said overlord, I would be thinking about how do we give as much power to the people as possible. Because I know that sounds like my solution for everything, but I think it really is. I think it really is the solution for this too, because I don't think that if you gave every person on Earth a vote, I do not think they would vote for the overlord. If you gave the 2,000 people who built and designed the Overlord a vote, they might vote for it. So I think that's the concern, is that a company or a group of people or whatever could build or roll out an AI that could impact the whole planet. And I don't think that humanity working together would make that same decision. So my remedy, I guess, is that we have more control as individuals over our data, over our assets, and have an ability to voice our opinions collectively online easier and better. And that's how we can vote against somebody making something that could actually harm us or prevent and eventually potentially stop them. And I don't think this is the way that society works currently. I think it's actually quite easy for them to vote 2,000 people creating the Overlord and deploy it.
Right.
So I think this is something that needs to be changed. We are currently not super, protected against this, and we could be if we had more sovereignty as individuals. So that's my remedy.
Very well
Very good.
done.
Yeah.
Great remedy. And so, what I'm going to give the chat, the live audience here, a little bit of a warning. We're going to be moving into a question and answer period. It'll be kind of short, but you got some time to take a few questions, right, Brad?
I got a few minutes, yeah.
Okay, we got a few minutes. So if you got some serious questions, pop them into the chat. Not serious questions will be addressed at my discretion. But if you are wondering, if you have any additional questions for Brad about decentralized internet or privacy or AI overlords or anything that we've talked about here, pop them into the chat there. We'll give you a few minutes to think of some questions while I give a shout out or two here on the chat. We have a new follower, Thread Ripert. What's up, Thread Ripert? Oh gosh, my VR hand is losing control. The tech just isn't there yet. I can't control anything.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, we got Hans Transhumanism. What's up, Hans Transhumanism? Love it. Also, I saw that Jeff Bezos, #1, not a clone, is here. So thanks. I always love it when he pops into the chat. Thanks for being here, buddy. Okay, let's see here. Scanning.
We got a question from the Maverick Pilgrim. How can unstoppable domains interlace with a mesh network solution? That sounds like a very technical question.
Well, by mesh network, I'm going to assume you mean like being able to have like a decentralized internet access. That's typically what people mean. Where I've got we talked about this a little bit earlier, where I go and I use the internet by getting access to somebody else's internet on somebody else's device that's nearby me. Right. So the mesh network or the access to the internet would just be like your first step. So right now you've got we've got domains and we've got websites, but we still have this problem where somebody could turn off my internet access. So it's still better than the current system. You can take down a website entirely. The decentralized web, you can't take down a website, but you can block a certain person from viewing that website temporarily, maybe, but you can still block them. With a mesh network, a decentralized internet service provider, you can't even do that last step. So that's the holy grail. Like once we have that, we've got everything. We basically have a system where anybody can just get online, anybody can transact and launch websites and do whatever they want to do, communicate, and no one can stop it. That's the holy grail. So I think the mesh network is like a missing piece. We're not focused on this piece. There are companies that are working on it. It's not critical for us to get started, but I think over the long term, it is critical to have a really robust censorship-resistant internet. Great.
I want to correct myself. I called one of the new followers Hans Transhumanism. His name is Hans Trumanism. Hans Trumanism. Sorry about that, Hans Trumanism. Okay, I got a question from Ferraro CJ. I'm 50. what would be one advice to give someone who is just stepping into this new area? So maybe decentralization or crypto or anything like that. Any advice for a 50-year-old just getting started?
So it depends on your taste, but I would definitely recommend watching videos. That's always helpful. There's a ton of great content about Ethereum in particular, as well as about IPFS, which is the decentralized storage network. All of that stuff is going to be super interesting. If you're a little bit more of a nerd, you might want to start with the Bitcoin white paper, which is 8 pages long, but very profound. And that alone might kind of get the wheels turning in your head for like what this new paradigm really means.
Great point. Yeah, the Bitcoin white paper being sort of the ancient sacred texts of blockchain and decentralization. Good place to start.
It's the Old Testament of the crypto world.
Yeah, exactly. Well put. Okay, Holden McGroin asks, does it work with the current system, or do we need to forsake the current system? And I'll pair that with a question from Flippy Official, who says, can we access decentralized web on our mobile device? So maybe a little bit into how do you actually interact with sites built through your service, or maybe even the future of that.
Yeah, so I think you're going to see decentralized web and traditional web sitting next to each other for quite a while. So they're not going to necessarily exist in completely separate systems. But what's happening right now is, so we're just starting down the path of integrations with browsers. And so one of them is, so we have a Opera browser, which is live right now on Android. So if you have an Android phone, you could type in, Kyber.crypto, for example, which is a crypto exchange that's live, and you'd be able to see that website. If you're on a desktop, it's extensions right now, like Chrome extensions and things like that. But there's a lot more coming. So browsers need to integrate this. It's different than the way that they would do a traditional lookup for a website, but they're interested, and the browser community, by and large, was, I would say, supporters of open web. That the browser industry in general, I think, is very focused on, excited about these concepts, even going back to the 1990s. It's just that the tech wasn't there, so they didn't really have a path forward. But now that they do, we're seeing a lot of excitement there. So long answer, they will sit together. You'll probably start to see search engines that show you .crypto search results as well as .com search results together, mixed together. Most browsers will support both, so you won't have to have a special tool that doesn't allow you to view a .com either. So I think we're going to see them kind of sit side by side inside of the apps that we use for a while, until maybe slowly people more and more start transitioning to the decentralized version.
Great. And, actually, this is a great question. And depending on your time, might be one of, if not the last question, but I think it's connected. And actually an important one here from Darth Tribler. What's up, Darth Tribler? The question, since my chat just moved. Since the centralization we currently have with the internet, we know today, was initially geared more towards standardization to grant better access to more people, as well as enabling better compatibility with different systems. With decentralization, what do you think we could do to make sure that access and compatibility was there for everyone? Related question, I think, here.
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say that in general, the way that blockchain works actually gets us to simpler, more universal standards than we have with the current internet. We may wind up in a place, now this is sort of an open question, but the way that it happened with the original, with the traditional internet, is you would have the HTTP protocol, which is one of the first protocols used, and then there's a few other protocols that wound up kind of getting stuck together that makes up the current internet. That wound up leading to a place of interoperability over time. We could wind up with a similar thing with blockchains, where you wind up with a lot of different protocols stitched together. But even still, everything is open source. And the best part about blockchain tech is that it has this method to fund itself. It has this currency involved. The networks are really good at bootstrapping themselves. They're far better than other open source networks at being able to proliferate. And so if you look at Ethereum has in the past 4 years gotten itself into, all kinds of applications, hundreds of thousands or millions of developers. It's gotten itself all over the place. It's gotten itself into Opera browser. It's gotten itself into Samsung. It's gotten itself into Microsoft tools. It's gotten itself into all of these different places really fast. And that's a really good sign for standardization, because the standards are able to get adopted faster in this world than they are in the traditional internet world. And I think part of that is just because of the funding. There's just open source blockchain communities have 100 times more resources than an open source traditional internet community did 25 years ago.
Perfo.
Sounds
Great
good.
answer.
I do have
one last.
Oh, you got a question?
I got one last one from the chat here.
All
This
right.
is from Six String Commando, and again related. I think this was a great series of questions. Oh my gosh, my VR hand is going wild. Oh no, I lost it. Oh
You
my
lost the
gosh,
question.
this is not good. No, I got it. Here we go. When do you foresee decentralized internet becoming the norm? Good cap off to that series of questions.
Yeah,
you
I think
got a
it's also-
timeline on when you might see this, becoming more ubiquitous?
I think that, so I mentioned these sort of waves where I think it's the crypto community first. I think we're in the crypto community wave right now. I think this one has been going probably in earnest since 2019, so it's pretty new. I think we probably got another 1 to 2 years maybe of the crypto only wave or majority crypto wave. I think the next wave after that is going to be the censorship wave. The people around the world that are getting censored that really, really need this stuff. And then I think the final wave after that is going to be the everyone else, the migration wave. I'm not moving over because I'm worried about censorship. I'm moving over because the system works better. And I think that wave, we're probably not even going to start that wave for another, 5 to 10 years or something like that. I think that's going to take a little while. But the crypto community itself is, 50 million plus people. The community of people being censored is, if you look at if you just count places in Asia alone, you probably can get up to about 2 billion people.
Right.
So the numbers for that second group are pretty large. It's actually a little bit more, people in a country like the United States where free speech is broadly protected are probably one of the last categories to have this kind of really, really urgent need. But you're still going to see people doing it for business reasons. You're going to see companies embracing this tech because they want to be the providers. And so that's kind of how we've seen waves go with this kind of, censorship resistant tech previously. So I think that's kind of what you should expect, that it's going to be a crypto thing for the next year or two. And then it's going to be about people around the world who can't publish.
Sounds good.
There you go. So 5 years minimum. You got some time to learn, Six String Commando. You got this, buddy.
I just want to know how long before we have a truly decentralized platform where we can live stream, because I think DLive is kind of like that, but I don't know that the process itself is decentralized. But is there any, because hosting websites is one thing, hosting a live stream is a whole different deal.
I think it is not as hard as you would think. The problem right now is mostly on the user experience, and we are really focused on this problem. We think this is absolutely a problem that can get a lot better in the near future. And the tools actually already basically work. It's just that the user experience isn't there. I can't just click 2 buttons and get it started. So it's like all the stuff. All the problem right now is stitching all the pieces together, but
Right.
the pieces exist. So I can tell you everything's possible, and now it's just we need to figure out all the user experiences. And just from looking at how it's been over the past couple of years with some of the just basic stuff around blockchain domains and websites, the last round seems like it took around 18 months to go from like developer tools to like I can click and buy a domain and launch a website. It may take another year or two to get that really easy, but I think it's possible. Like, I have been on a video chat before on a decentralized system, and it worked just as well as this.
Okay.
So it is already possible today, and I'm going to try to make it happen as soon as possible. That way, you can have me back, and we can talk on we can do this on a decentralized system.
Yeah.
So I'm going to
There we
that
go.
motivation.
Sounds good.
Oh, we will be one of the first to jump on to a nice, solid live stream decentralized system. So that's good to know. Okay, so thank you. I don't see any more super important questions. Sorry for those people who think their questions are all your questions are super important, but I think that's about all the time we have for today. I want to be respectful of your time, Brad. So Gons, we're going to make sure to drop all sorts of links if you want to learn more about the decentralized web, if you want to learn more about unstoppable domains, if you want to learn more about the Google Overlord. There's all sorts of resources there at canarycryradio.com. Make sure to check that out. But Brad, why don't you tell us a little bit, if people want to learn more or get involved or see what you got going on, where can they go?
I would, first of all, go to unstoppabledomains.com and check it out, read our content, play around. You can follow us on Twitter at UnstableWeb. You'll see all the latest updates. And we've also got a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week conversation in Telegram. So you can go to Unstoppable Domains Telegram, and you will find people in there chatting about the decentralized web.
Booyah.
Very cool.
Okay. Gons, any last words before we land this plane, buddy?
I think we're good. I tried to put something in the chat and it's not showing up. So probably a good time to start calling it a stream.
Oh man, it's happening. It's happening again. So we're gonna land this plane before it falls apart in midair here. So thanks everybody for tuning in, and thank you so much, Brad from Unstoppable Domains. Brad Cam, you are the man. We love what you're doing over there, and yes, let us know when you got more updates there, so we can have you back on.
Will do. This was a lot of fun. Really appreciate all the deep questions.
You bet, buddy.
Thanks, Brad.
And thank you, everybody who watched live here. Remember, you can make sure to check out Unstoppable Domains, and Gons is an affiliate there. So if anybody's interested in getting involved, Gons will make some links available for you that'll help support Gons during this time. And if you value this show, we run on the value for value system, people. So if you get value out of this show, make sure to head to patreon.com/CCNT. You got bonus episodes, all sorts of fun stuff. And of course, remember to follow us on Twitch, twitch.tv/CanaryCryRadio. All sorts of fun stuff coming there. Make sure to check out the show notes at canarycryradio.com for all the info, the extracurricular sources that you'll want to check out. And make sure to tune in next time. We're going to be live streaming 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. For those wondering when, make sure to tune in sometime between 12 and 5. We'll be back next Monday, but until then, everybody, make sure to think outside the cage.
I want to shake things up, shake things up. I want to shake things up, shake things up. Leave the bird alone. I want to stir up some controversy. I want to rattle a few cages. I'm the last angry man. You'll never silence me. I'm the last angry man. I'm the last angry man. You'll never silence me. I'm the last angry man. A crusader for the little guy. Well, we'll see about that.
Whatever, Illuminati.